2 years ago, I graduated in the top 5% of my university, and I wasn't studying 15 hours a day. I didn't sacrifice my social life. I wasn't cramming in my revision for weeks before the exams. It was all a relatively smooth and stress-free process. And a lot of people have this false idea that in order to achieve incredibly high grades, that you need to be studying all of the time and you need to sacrifice all other areas of your life in order to achieve them. But that's just not the case. Of course, it does take a lot of hard work, but something that is just as equally important is working smart. Because often working hard just isn't enough. Maybe you've been in the situation where you're studying and studying maybe 10, 11, 12 hours a day, but you're just not getting the grades that you're aiming for. And if you are in this situation, I created the Project Elon Transform Your Grades in 30 Days course exactly for you. Check the link in the description for more information, but this video is going to go through the exact steps that I took that made me study smart, that made me study more efficiently, therefore consuming, processing and retaining more information in a shorter amount of time. Spread out your studying. Now, this is such a simple concept, but it's so incredibly underutilized. So if your exams or just your education in general is stressing you out, then this is for you. The vast majority of students, when their semester first starts, the number of hours of studying they do will be relatively low. As the semester progresses and their exams get closer, the number of hours of studying will steadily increase, and then 1 or 2 weeks before the exam, the studying will suddenly increase even more as the pressure from the exams motivate them to start cramming in preparation. And that's maybe how you study, it's how most students study, but it's just not studying smart. It's quite a stressful way of approaching your exams, and at least in my opinion, there is a better and smarter way of studying. So what I would do is, at the beginning of the semester, I would set a goal of the number of hours that I was going to study every day. Now that could be 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, it really is up to you. But just make sure that whatever you choose, you can maintain it throughout the whole semester. So for me, it was studying 8 hours a day. I treated university like a full-time job, so 8 hours was perfect. And at the beginning of the semester, I would be studying 8 hours a day, and this was focused, intense studying. And at the beginning of the semester, it would often be background reading of the new material, going through past papers to get an idea of what I'm going to be learning about in the lectures, and watching documentaries and YouTube videos about the new subject, just to have a broad, basic foundational understanding of the subject. You see, at this point, no one else will be putting in as much studying. There's no exam deadline for months to come, so most people don't have the pressure of an exam to motivate them to study. So this is where you get ahead of most other students, because there's no pressure of deadlines. It's a relatively stress-free way of studying. And it can be fun too. Watching documentaries and watching YouTube videos on the subject can be an engaging way of being introduced into a new subject, and is far more interesting than reading thick textbooks. Now, this is where it gets interesting. As you progress through the semester, your 8 hours of studying stays the same. Where most other students have to increase the number of hours they study because they need to catch up, you don't. You stick to your 8 hours throughout the middle of the semester and even just before the exams. There were so many exams that I had approaching where I didn't have to increase my studying in order to prepare for them. And this is why university on a whole wasn't a stressful experience for me, because I had exams coming, because I had started preparing for them well ahead of time. I wasn't panicking or rushing to cram in my studying days before the exam. So if I had one tip for you to study smarter and not harder, I'd suggest setting a number of hours to study at the beginning of the semester and stick to it. Whether it's 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever it is, start preparing for your exams right before the beginning of the semester, and then when your exams do come around, you'll be completely prepared for them. Eliminate pseudo studying. Now, I just mentioned that you should be spreading out your studying throughout the entire semester rather than just cramming in a few weeks before your exam. But there's one big mistake that I see a lot of students make when doing this. They space out their studying more, which is great, but because there's no pressure from deadlines or exams, they begin pseudo studying. So pseudo studying is when you just sit there with your laptop and your textbook and you are studying, but you're not really taking in the information. You're more just studying to feel like you're being productive rather than actually studying with your exams in mind. And you'll probably find that the majority of the marks you get in an exam are coming from a select few things that you're doing when you're studying. The rest is studying for studying's sake. So for example, for me, past papers were absolutely essential for getting good grades in my exams, and so I prioritized past papers. Other tasks, such as reading for background information in a textbook, didn't directly correlate to getting higher grades, so as a result I didn't allocate much time to reading pages and pages of thick textbooks. I also didn't gain much from answering unnecessarily large amounts of practice problems. It wasn't like I was learning new information and getting significantly better by practicing hundreds of the same practice problems. Once I hit a certain number, the learning curve flattened, so I stopped. Another thing that I noticed was that I was researching for hours and hours before writing an assignment. I mean, I could research for like 7 or 8 hours before I even typed a word for the assignment. And although preparation for writing an assignment is important, it certainly doesn't need 7 or 8 hours of it. So I learned to restrict the oxygen I gave to the research and cut it down to 2 to 3 hours, and it saved me 5 hours per assignment, and my final grade wasn't affected at all. So for all my studying, for every task that I started, I questioned myself, to what extent will this task affect my overall grade? If the answer was by a lot, then I'd increase the time I spent working on that task. If the answer was not a lot, then I'd decrease the time on that task or even eliminate it altogether. Active engagement. Now, I see students making this mistake all the time. They come to me and say they've been studying all day, every day for the exams, but when their exams come around, their grades don't match with the amount of studying they've done. And one reason for that is because a lot of students mistake reading and rereading texts or notes as studying. But it's so incredibly important that you're not just reading the texts or notes passively, but you're actively engaging in the material. So active engagement is the process of constructing meaning from the material. So that involves making connections to lectures, forming examples, asking and answering questions. So basically it's about thinking about what you're reading. But active learning doesn't necessarily mean highlighting or underlining text, rereading, or rote memorization, which is basically just repeating the text over and over in your head. Doing these things can help you engage in the task, but they're not generally considered active studying techniques. However, some ideas of active studying include create a Q&A, so writing out questions as you read, and then once you've finished reading, writing out answers for the questions, and you can also create your own quiz and even give that quiz to your friends to use. Become a teacher. So say the information out loud in your own words as if you're teaching the concepts to a class. Alternatively, you can teach your friends or even your parents or siblings. Create concept maps and diagrams. So things like mind maps are a great way of processing the information and actively engaging the brain to help with memory retention. Active recall, and this is something that I talk about quite a lot on this channel, and I talk about it quite a lot because it is such an efficient way of studying. So basically it's where you read a page from a textbook, then you close the textbook and you write down everything that you remember from that page. You then go back and open the textbook to see what information you missed. Avoid multitasking. Now, multitasking does not improve efficiency. So this is when you're performing more than one task at the same time. So you might be studying 2 subjects at the same time, or studying and browsing Instagram, or studying and chatting to friends on social media. A study in 2012 by Reynald Junko showed a correlation between a class's GPA and how often they were multitasking when they studied for their exams. And the study found that the more the students multitasked when they studied, the lower their GPA was. So consider eliminating distractions, things that prevent you from becoming fully engaged during your study sessions. If you don't need your laptop for your studying, then don't use it. Use apps such as the Focus To Do app to help keep you focused and prevent you from getting distracted or trying to multitask, because apps like these can also lock your phone so that it eliminates the temptation you might get from getting distracted from things like notifications on your phone. And so avoiding multitasking and getting into the zone of studying studying is incredibly important. A student that studies for 8 hours and is super focused and engaged will obviously process and retain significantly more information than a student that also studies for 8 hours but is procrastinating and distracted throughout. The distributed practice technique. So this video is all about studying in the most efficient way possible, and one of the most efficient ways of studying is called distributed practice. So this basically means spacing out your studying over several short periods, so say over several days or even weeks. An example of this practice is to study in short periods on each class every day. So this might just be for 30 minutes on each class every day. And what that will do is help you process the information on a deeper level, but also help you with information recall. And this isn't a new concept. It was first proposed in the book Psychology of Study in 1932 by Professor Cecil Mace. And he wrote, "Perhaps the most important discoveries are those which relate to the appropriate distribution of the periods of study. Acts of revision should be spaced in gradually increasing intervals, roughly intervals of 1 day, 2 days, 4 days, 8 days, and so on." So studying smarter rather than harder is such an essential concept when you're studying for your exams. Life is just too short to be studying and studying but not getting any results, and this might be a trap that you're stuck in, where you're studying for 8, 10, even 12 hours a day but you're not getting the grades you expect. And that's why I created the Transform Your Grades in 30 Days course specifically for you. The whole course is designed to show you how you can decrease your studying by a significant amount, but at the same time by significantly improving your grades. And you do this by studying more efficiently, so implementing study techniques that have been scientifically proven to help boost information processing and memory retention. You can click on the link in the description where I talk more about the course in more detail, and if you decide to jump on board, I look forward to working with you very shortly.